This is the Liberty Mom Show. Liberty Moms are the original Secretaries of Defense. We are the real defenders of the home front, and we are there when it comes to defending our families and our communities. I'm your host today, Dalane England. I have amazing guests with me. She is an absolute Liberty Mom. She has been on the front lines for many years, and I have so much respect and regard for her. Her name is Kris Kimball. She has a long resume. I don't know that we'll have time to go through all of her accomplishments, but the reason that we're having her on today is because she is a presidential elector representing the state of Utah. And she's also a former chair for the Davis County Republican Party. She's been an elector before as well. She was an elector in 2016, a presidential elector. And, she's been a candidate. She has been precinct chair and delegate numerous times, many, many times. And so she's really, really been involved in Liberty and standing up for all of our rights and doing her job to make sure that our liberties and our rights are protected from a platform of a moral foundation. And we're very delighted to have Kris join us. Welcome, Kris. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Dalane. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm thrilled to have you, and I just think it's really super exciting to hear about. I am a lover, as you know, I'm a lover of the Electoral College, and the only people that don't love the Electoral College, in my opinion, are people that don't understand it, or they don't really want to have a republic. They don't really understand, or they're against having freedom. That's my very judgmental opinion of it. The Electoral College is amazing. It is such a genius idea, such a great design. And
right. The Electoral College is really a brilliant idea that was conceived by our founders. And it took a little bit of direct direct access of the people with the representation of the Senate. And they combined different avenues so that the office of, now originally, if I was a presidential elector, when the founding fathers established the Constitution, I would have actually today was the day it's certified or designated in the Constitution. So on this date was the day that we would go and vote and cast our ballots for the president, currently.
And there would have been no popular vote taken.
Popular vote wouldn't have existed at that time when the founders, but as an elector, I would not have just been voting for a name. I would have had the opportunity to submit two names.
Correct.
I would have submitted a statesman from the state of Utah, someone who doesn't already hold an elected office. And, back up. The electors could not be anyone who hold an elected office. They wanted somebody that wasn't already part of an elected system. So the electors would then nominate two people, one from the state of Utah and one from another state, any other state. They would submit two names that would then go back to Congress, and then on January 6th, those names would be counted.
Correct.
Okay?
In a sealed envelope.
And then whoever has the majority vote from the names that were sent from the electors would then become the president. But that was changed with an amendment, and now the electors basically follow what happens with the popular vote in your state. Okay? Not the national popular vote, but just the popular vote of your state. So in Utah, Trump won the popular vote in Utah. Therefore, the electors that are assigned for Utah, there's 6 altogether, they're bound by law to cast a ballot for Donald Trump.
Yes. And then you just cast your vote today, which you are bound by law to vote today, a certain way.
What we did is it was an oral affirmation of who we were voting for. We had to orally state who we were voting for, as well as sign 6 different certificates. Each of us had to sign 6 certificates, because those are in each certificate is counted as one electoral vote. And that is then put in a sealed envelope that we had to personally seal and turn it over to the officers of the state, who normally it would be your lieutenant governor that would oversee this ceremony. But for some reason, our lieutenant governor was missing in action today. We don't know where she was. There was no excuses given to her absence in the ceremony. She didn't bother to have another state official come and officiate over the ceremony.
So she didn't replace herself? She didn't send a replacement?
No.
She didn't, oh,
No.
So no one from the lieutenant governor's office was even there?
We had 2 young interns from her office, but no state official.
No, nobody elected,
And
no state official.
Yes, this is a very highly, what's the word I want to use? A very high level of ceremony that is taking place to secure our election of our U.S. president, and our lieutenant governor decided not to show up.
That's very interesting with no explanation.
And also, as I say, she didn't bother to have another state official like the AG or the auditor, the whomever, another state official come in and officiate over this ceremony, which was rather disappointing that we don't have leadership in the state that respects the office of President of the United States. It was kind of sad.
That is sad because, again, the Electoral College is so amazing. Of course, it's been changed so much that it's not that similar to how it was when it was original.
It's not, because before the electors would nominate. That was the whole point.
The entire job was to pick people, and people didn't run to be president. That's what was so awesome. Nobody ran to be president.
Right. But yeah, exactly. And there was, you have to worry about campaigning and all that stuff. All that stuff didn't apply because the electors were looking to see who in their own state would best be the person to represent that state, represent the state at the national level, and follow the Constitution and be honest and have integrity, right? Then you would look at someone outside of your state. You might have somebody in Wyoming or Florida or Tennessee that is doing outstanding things, and you thought that would be a good person to be our president.
There's a great person of character.
Yeah.
It
is a good process, and it didn't require all this campaigning and this vitriol and this the way we have our elections today. That would not have existed back then.
And all the things that people complain about with elections didn't exist. That's what's it was so genius, because the president of the United States was never designed to represent the people. They were designed to represent the country, which is what the executive is supposed to do, treaties, and represent the country with other in foreign entities in other countries, and be the commander in chief, protect our country, protect our borders. If you read Article 2 and list those jobs of the executive, it's not really to represent the people. That's what the House of Representatives are for. So it got rid of, it didn't ever have any of all the stuff that we all hate, all the money spent, the vitriol, all the campaigning, all the minutia that goes into someone. And then
the lies, the TV commercials, you get sick of the commercials, and then all the negative campaigning like we saw in Utah. We saw lots of negative campaigning in the Senate race. We had all this dark money that came in to attack Trent Staggs, who was the party nominee for the U.S. Senate. And that dark money was behind John Curtis. And just 11 million, a lot of money came into the state from out of state. And so it gets rid of all that.
Think of what we could do. Think of all the good we could do.
Yeah, you're not having these PACs and these NGOs and organizations that combine their resources to promote someone who fits their ideology. You're actually having someone who is a statesman, who is respected and has proven that he's honest, he has integrity, and he is someone that abides by the Constitution, and therefore that name is going to be submitted. So to be elected, you're going to have a pretty dang good reputation, okay?
Right.
Because there's only 6 electors from Utah, and if those people were only selecting 6, had only 6 votes in Utah, they might not all agree on the same person. But if somebody's very outstanding, they would. But that person also would need to be a large enough reputation that other people in America would want him as well. So it would be really the cream of the crop is who would be nominated, more so than just somebody that was a mayor in a small town.
Or someone that wants to run.
Right?
Yeah.
Or just whatever, I mean, because we've had Buttigieg that was a mayor. John Curtis was the mayor of Provo, although he's been in Congress. But you have, just people that, I don't even know if Donald Trump would have been nominated, to be honest, because, well, he was pretty well known. I mean, it's out of context to say, but I'm just saying that's how they originally designed it. Is electors nominated the people that should be considered for president. And then those names were counted on January 6th. If there was a tie, then it would go to the House to have an election to break the tie.
Absolutely. And so it was a completely different system, and it was far superior.
Yeah.
But I still would prefer to keep what we have, the parts we have left, than go to a just populist vote.
If we did not have the Electoral College, then there'd be about 10 counties in the United States that would decide the presidential election.
The same 10 counties every time. They would all make that decision. It would never matter how anyone else in the country, how they voted or what they wanted or any protections they wanted to see in place. Those 10 counties would literally run our country. That's what would happen if we got rid of the Electoral College right now. So we do need to guard it.
Basically, we would have Democrats in charge all the time because those counties contain blue cities.
Very blue.
Blue cities.
And speaking of blue, and speaking of which, they have already introduced a bill in the House that would get rid of the Electoral College. So that is going to be brought forward. Hopefully it won't get very far.
Yeah, they are. It will take. That's going to have to be a constitutional amendment.
Yes,
because it's redesigning our Constitution. So that's going to be a big haul. But they are starting the discussion.
They are starting.
They don't like the idea. Now the thing is, the narrative doesn't fit right now because Donald Trump won both the popular vote and the Electoral College. So it's kind of a moot point at this moment in time.
Yes, but that's why they're just getting started, because it takes a little bit of time, and they just kind of keep these talking points, keep de-educating the citizens and getting us to think that the Electoral College is antiquated, that it's anti-democracy, that it's not a good thing, and that one person, one vote. And so they're on their way of trying to convince us as citizens so they can get it passed. And so we just need to be really vigilant and help to educate each other on the genius and the beauty of the Electoral College. It really is quite amazing.
Well, and I think it might be interesting for the listeners to be aware of how one becomes an elector. How does that happen?
Good point, Kris. Yes.
How are they disseminated across the state? Because we had Gina Worthen up in Cache County, which is on the very north end, of Utah. And we also had Jordan Hess coming up from Washington County. So the southern end of the state was represented today. So the representation for electors follows your congressional delegation. So in Utah, we have, of course, 2 senators, and then we have 4 congressional districts. So Gina Worthen and myself, we ran as at-large electors, which meant anyone in the state of Utah who was a state delegate in this election cycle and attended the April, I believe it was 23rd convention. That is when we were elected. Okay, so we filed to become electors, to be on the ballot, and then the delegates voted for us at the state convention. So Gina and I ran as at large, and then the other 4 ran within their congressional districts. So only people in CD1 could vote for their elector.
Right.
Only people in CD2 could vote for the names of people that live in that district. Okay, so that's the representation. It does represent the whole of the state. Okay, so we had someone from Utah County, someone from Wasatch County, Iowa Salt Lake, Weber County was represented, Cache, and Washington. So there was someone from 6 different counties there today.
Yes.
Representing the state of Utah.
Yes. So there, it's just as the rest of the Constitution where we elect, that's what a republic is. You elect representatives to get informed and to go represent your area and represent you. And that's what the electors do. You represent the people of your area. You're at large, so you represent the entire state. But then you represent the state of Utah in the Electoral College. And so, yeah, it's really amazing. So tell us, like, what you get elected, and then what's the process like after that, Kris?
So you get elected, and then the process after that is you hope your candidate wins. Because you could become an elector and never do anything.
That's true.
If your candidate doesn't win.
Which is what happened for the Democrats, because they had this process.
Right. It happened to Democrats this year in 2020. There was a slate of Republican electors that were elected in 2020, and they didn't do anything.
Right.
Because Trump did not get the official nomination. So this year, because I will tell you, it was very different. Now, I was one of the 6 that had been an elector before. I had served in 2016 when Trump ran the first time. And that race was very close. He won by a small electoral margin, and then Clinton had won the popular vote. Okay. And so there was a lot of pushback against him being certified as the president. And back in the day, the Democrats had gone in and doxed the electors. And doxing simply means they make public your private information. And then they push a narrative to get other Democrats to contact you to change your vote. Right. And so I was inundated. I had over 1,000 letters. I had 3,000 to 4,000 emails. I had phone calls. I had text messages. I had messaging coming through. Every form of communication I was inundated with people telling me not to vote for Trump, to be a hero, to save the country, to do the right thing. Do not vote for Trump. That was in 2016. With the win that he had this time, which was very sound, obviously he's won both popular, electoral. The Senate has gone Republican as well as the House. The court is favorable for the Republicans, and only because we have Republican nominees as a majority on the court at this point. That's not a partisan
position or branch,
but it's been appointed by Republican presidents. It's going to appoint more conservative, originalist, constitutional judges. Okay, so he's got that in his favor. So much is in his favor. I didn't have any pushback. No one contacted me to say don't vote for Trump. Okay, not one, nothing.
That is kind of amazing, Kris. Really, don't you find that amazing? Especially because you had people showing up and doing all kinds, calling you names and doing all this stuff, showing up when you went to.
They were yelling at us.
Yeah,
they were shaming us.
Yes.
Shame on you. Shame on you. That's what they were chanting. They had signs. All of this is, first of all, not protocol up at the Capitol.
No.
And second,
it's not.
Which is most important, it's illegal because it's voter intimidation. And unfortunately, at the time, Spencer Cox was our lieutenant governor back in 2016, and he has notoriously been somebody who doesn't like Donald Trump, and he allowed them to intimidate us as we were casting our votes for office. They yelled at us the whole time. And I had my grandchildren there. They were asking my daughter, like, why are they yelling at Grandma?
Right.
What's going on?
She's so
They couldn't
nice.
understand
Why are they yelling
when
at her?
people were yelling and that they were being allowed to yell at us.
Yes. And if you've ever been to the Capitol, you do not behave that way. That is not okay at the Capitol. We do not behave in that manner.
And Spencer Cox is very well aware. He was a state legislator.
Yes.
Cannot give him a pass for 1 minute.
Not for
He
ignorance.
welcomed them, told them it was great that they were exercising their right to free speech on the behalf of squelching our right to be able to vote without intimidation.
Right.
See, someone's rights are being taken away when you allow for someone to abuse the right. Do you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely,
So,
because the right, your rights never are allowed to squash someone else's rights. My right ends where your right begins. So we have a right to speak as long as it doesn't take someone else's right away. And the government's job is to protect all of our rights. So there is always a balance there.
So they have every right to be in that room because the ceremony is public.
Yes.
No one is excluded. Anyone can be in there. You just can't intimidate the voters with signage and with chanting and yelling.
Right.
It's not allowed. But on back in December 2016, that's what happened at our ceremony, unfortunately.
But you hung tough, Kris. You didn't cave. You didn't
I hung
cave.
tough. Hang in there. I hung in there for Donald J. Trump. But it was such a contrast today to a very civil ceremony. It was just that it was disappointing that our lieutenant governor would not have enough respect to show up or to send somebody in her place, to respect the office of president and the gravity of this vote, the ceremony that puts our president in office.
So powerful. Yeah, it's really, that's just really, really quite amazing. So the experience was it was just a more positive, more.
Oh, yes. It was more positive for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. And we as electors, we will get an invitation to the inauguration. And so that's a nice perk that is given to us under that duty. We haven't gotten those yet, but we got confirmation today that would be happening. And so we do get an invitation to the inauguration as well as the inaugural ball that they hold on January 20th, I believe.
Yeah.
Should know that, right?
Yeah, you're going to need to know that, Kris. You're going to need to get your day timer out.
January 20th. I want to keep saying it's the 21st because I think everything happens on Tuesdays when it comes to elections. But the inauguration is based on a specific date. And it's always January 20th. So it can move across the calendar because it's a date and not a day of the week like election.
Yes, it's a specific date. We lost your picture, Kris. I'm not sure why.
Sorry.
No worries.
Let me go back here.
Okay. There we go.
Sorry. I went to grab my calendar and hopefully I will come back online.
You're back on.
Yeah.
We can see you.
Okay, good.
Yes, thank you. That worked. Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That is really quite a remarkable experience and it's so unusual. And the Electoral College really is, it's not just brilliant, it's very unique, and it isn't something that you see in other places, in other countries. So it really is amazing.
It's a very small group of people because you have to realize there's only 535 nationwide total electors. Okay, 535 because 100 are from Congress and 4 from the Senate, 100 from the Senate, and 435 from Congress.
Right.
And that is it.
That's it.
Okay,
so, and Utah 6. We have 6 in Utah.
Our population of 350 million people.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that is very fun. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I would have liked to have been there, but I had other commitments. But I'm thankful to you for going and for representing us so well, and for sharing that experience and for sharing that great information about the Electoral College.
Yeah, it's really an honor when you realize how few people ever get that opportunity to really be the ones that elect and cast the votes for the President of the United States.
Yep. How it happens. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Terrific. Okay. So, and I think that we were very blessed this year. I'll just throw this in real quick. I think we were blessed that we did have the electoral votes and the popular vote both line up, because it was such an overwhelming majority for President Trump that it was both the electoral votes and the popular votes. So that, I think, worked in our favor this particular year.
Yes, God's had his hand
Mm-hmm.
on many aspects of this campaign cycle, starting in July 13th.
Yep, starting
in
July 13th.
Pennsylvania
Probably starting before that, but that was very much
Yeah.
a one that we could
That's
not.
the one where
We
the
couldn't.
world
Yes,
noticed that he was involved.
you couldn't deny it. I mean, you can, but it's kind of pretty self-evident. Okay, well, Merry Christmas, Kris.
Thank you.
It's my favorite time of the year. I love Christmas time, even though it is cold, and I really like it warm. But I love Christmas time because I love that extra effort that we make to focus on the birth and hopefully the life of our Savior, Jesus Christ. And as a person who hasn't ever been to Israel yet, but I really want to, but I want to go with you because you really have been, I don't know how many times, but you really know Israel and you know your stuff. In fact, you have a travel company, which is kind of why you've been so many times and how you've really given you the opportunity to dig in and to really learn so much. So I thought it would be so much fun for you to share with us some fun things about Israel and Jerusalem, and just some really interesting, great information that you have shared with me that I feel like has enhanced my personal life and my spiritual life and helped to enhance my Christmas celebration. So your travel company, Legacy Travels.
Yeah, Legacy Tours and Travel. I am
you.
a partner with that company. And, you know, the Lord has so blessed me to put me in that place for me to have the opportunity to travel and experience and to study history in person. And that may sound weird because it's like, well, history is something that happened in the past. How do you study it in person? But you go to the sites and you go to the places where these events took place. And it's interesting because my understanding and knowledge and what I've learned over time has been that a lot of these particular sites where amazing things take place are also sites that have energetic current attached to them. Okay, and if you've never heard of them before, there are ley lines that are around our Earth. Well, the ley lines line up with telluric ley lines that are in the Earth, but they're magnetic fields that are in our Earth and connect up into the atmosphere. Okay, and that is why certain sacred sites across the globe are always sitting on top of these types of energy sites. Okay, and when you have several of them in a row, and they can be buildings that a man might build, like a cathedral or a small church, or they can be natural things like a water, a spring, that are in succession in a row. That is what is determining a ley line. And there's lots of them in Great Britain, and I believe the fellow's name is Whately is his last name. He's the one that first came across these ley lines back in the early 1900s, could see them, actually see how they were laid out across Great Britain there. But they're fascinating.
Yeah,
and
it's very fascinating.
They are. And so they cross over water, and they end up in the old, into Israel. Mount Carmel is a really big site for ley line energy. And you're going to find that a lot of these places that are sacred over periods of time actually have these energetic sort lines or energetic energies attached to them. And if they don't, that's kind of an indicator that maybe this wasn't the exact spot. Because a lot of history is based on people, like when you show up in Israel, you're going to go to sites that are traditional sites.
Yeah.
This is the traditional site of where Jesus was born. It's the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem. Traditional site is the key word. Okay? And honestly, if I never went to that church again, I would be okay. But when people go on the tour with us, they want to go to the site that everybody talks about. But I've learned through another scholar, her name is Dr. Margaret Barker.
Right.
And she's a renowned scholar on Old Testament studies, as well as Old Testament temple worship. And she and other scholars have come up with an idea that they think the birth of Christ is really in an area that's actually between Bethlehem and Jerusalem. And we've been able to take our, when I go with my tours, we take our clients to this particular site, and it's called Kathisma. And it's the site of a Byzantine chapel that was there until about the 8th century. And honestly, Dalane, it's so fantastic because it's right off of the main highway. And the state of Israel is aware that it's there. They just don't have the money to excavate and work on the site. And so it's just covered up with dirt, okay?
Right.
And we get our driver, you've got to really, not all the drivers or tour guides over there know about the site, but once we get someone that can help us get to that site, then we get off and, oh my gosh, there's, you still got mosaic tiles that are on the ground. And we take our water bottles and we just wash them off, and you can see this beautiful mosaic floor. And if you've ever read the Proto-Evangelium of James, then that is James, who is the brother of Jesus. Now, in our lingo, in modern world, we would say stepbrother.
Right.
Okay. But the brother of Jesus, he's actually there and writing his story about the birth of Christ. Okay. And when you read that Proto-Evangelium of James, the depiction of the palm trees and the water and the setting really seems to be more there than over in Bethlehem at the Church of the Nativity. Okay? And think about it. If there's a really sacred site that is sacred to our most holy Jesus Christ, the Son of the most holy God, is it going to be a site that's trampled on by thousands and thousands of tourists every day?
Right.
No.
And that's not honored.
In my mind.
That's not honored.
In my mind, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But what makes sense is, what if there is what if the site is there? It's hidden in plain sight. Nothing's restricting anybody from stopping their car and walking over to that site. Okay? Nothing restricts you. It's just you have to know about it.
Right.
And it's hidden in plain sight and nobody goes. And so we take our group there, we go out, and there's actually a stone which is very prevalent in a lot of these chapels that are built on holy sites. They have a big rock or a stone that's like the altar stone. That is there, as well as all of this tile that was there from the Byzantine church that was used as a marker and was called kathisma. Now, what does kathisma mean in Greek? It means to squat. And so this is a traditional site that could be considered the place where Mary stopped and gave birth. Because back in the day, it's not like today where you lay down on a hospital bed.
Right.
Okay. They actually allowed gravity to help let the child be born.
You don't have to do all the work.
Anyone out there listening who's had natural childbirth, you know what it is. But a lot of times a woman will squat to have a baby.
But she didn't have drugs. And if you have natural, you're not having drugs. So you need to use the powers of nature to help you birth your baby.
Absolutely.
So you're not going to lay down in a bed to give birth.
For some reason, there's an ancient word, kathisma, attached to this particular church. And that word means to squat. And it's on the road to Bethlehem from Jerusalem, it's very likely this could be the spot. And to me, I feel like if it is the spot, it's a sacred spot, obviously, okay, of the birth spot of our Lord Jesus Christ. And you know what? It's going to be hidden in plain sight.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be hidden away. People aren't going to go to it because they don't really know about it. They haven't done extra research. They don't know where to go find it. I mean, the first time when I spoke with Margaret and she gave me directions on kind of where it was, it's not known by Kathisma to all the guides and operators. And I even traveled with somebody from Utah who'd been to Israel, I don't know, 75 times with one of the big tour companies.
Serious?
Never heard of it.
Wow.
Never heard of it. So it's very, very obscure. And that's why I'm more inclined to think that the birthplace of the Savior is going to be there versus at this huge tourist site in Bethlehem at the Church of the Nativity that everybody goes to, that is trampled through with thousands of people, and you stand in line for hours just to walk through and go down these stairs into this cave, this underground cave, and see what they are saying is the birthplace of Jesus.
Very interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really fascinating.
Yeah, it is. So, and that's what you find after you've been there, like a number of times, and you learn the city, and each time you're adding more knowledge and understanding,
Mm-hmm.
and you can kind of do deeper dives. I've been to probably almost everything that you could possibly see in Jerusalem and in most of Israel. I'm trying to remember. I'm not going to give you the exact name. I'm trying to remember, but it's interesting that in Jerusalem there's a hillside where the UN has a building, but anciently that hill had a very negative name, like the Dark Hill or the something like that.
Probably
I just could not.
Satan's palace or
See,
something
stuff like that. I just totally pick up on with my
yeah.
I'm like going, oh, that's really interesting how we have that entity end up on a hill that has a name that is attached to darkness.
Yes. Well,
Very
there's
apropos, right?
There's no accidents. Yeah, that's quite appropriate.
Mm-hmm. But you'll see things like that. That's why I'm saying when you travel and go and investigate history in person, wherever you go, you will come across those sort of things where you're seeing this name or a tradition that ties into something, and it actually ties into the entity that you're there to see. And so, anyway, it's very interesting. We've also taken our people over to the U.S. Embassy, which is a pretty cool place to see now that it's in Jerusalem.
Yes.
And but as far as Christmas, you're not going to have a more Bethlehem, and the thing is, right now, of course, you can't get into Bethlehem.
Right. Yeah.
It's the West Bank, okay,
Mm-hmm.
but Israel is really a magical place. I've not been there for Christmas per se because I want to be home with my family and my grandkids. But I've been there into the middle part of November, and they start in the Christian quarters. They start putting out their decorations, and you can start feeling that the Christmas season beginning there. And it is very magical to think that you're in the place where our Savior Jesus Christ was born. It is pretty cool.
And where he walked and where he lived. So just to be in that energy, in that environment right there where his life happened.
And it's not exclusive to Jerusalem. In fact, he spent really minimal amounts of time in Jerusalem.
Very much so.
He's more up in the Galilee, and the Galilee, honestly, is my favorite area. The peacefulness, the serenity, and it's not overly developed. And so what you see on the Galilee is, other than, you've got Tiberias, of course, is a pretty big modern city, but the rest of it is pretty undeveloped. And so you're kind of seeing what Jesus would have seen. And we always want to get up early. We get people up early to watch the sunrise because it's like, this is the sun that Jesus would have seen. We go out on the water of the Galilee, and this is this is where he was. This is where he would have been ministering, and we know he walked on the water and calmed the storm. And it's just a magical place to be able to retrace his life. And of course, we always finish up with the passion and the final week of his life, and visit all of those sites that tie into that. But the birth of Christ is very, very special, and it's nice to be able to maybe think that this obscure site on the side of the road called Cathesma could very well be that site of his birth.
That is very fascinating. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, it is a great time of the year, and I'm really happy for you. I know that you give amazing tours. I've been on one of your tours, and it was absolutely incredible. And that's coming from someone who doesn't like tours. I did Egypt, and it was absolutely amazing.
Yes, and we were able to go to a site off of Elephantine Island down near in Aswan, just off of there's a small little island, Elephantine, and this was the site of a Jewish temple.
Yes.
Okay, and it's amazing because this is the site where, when the Babylonians came in to destroy Jerusalem after the apostasy that most people don't know about, but the Jewish apostasy that occurred in approximately 600 BC, and so Jerusalem was destroyed because of that. They took out the female in the temple and got rid of our divine feminine, the Holy Mother, the wife of Father in Heaven, and there was a bunch of refugees that escaped. Of course, if your city's being sieged, right, you're going to try to leave. And a lot of Jews went down to Egypt, and they went down into Elephantine Island, and they built a temple.
Yes.
And see, that was very contrary to the law at that time, because you could only have one temple, and it could only be in Jerusalem.
And it is quite an amazing temple.
Mm-hmm.
Quite amazing.
Yeah. So we were able to go to the site of that particular temple that was built by the refugees when they left after the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem in about, I guess, like 587, something like that, AD or BC.
Yeah.
But it's really well worth. That's a passion I have, is just studying history, because I think most of your listeners would agree that history can be changed and has been changed. And even in our lifetimes, we've witnessed how they've gone in and canceled or changed or altered historical events. So if we're doing it in modern time, they sure did it in ancient time.
Yeah, they can have an agenda when there's an agenda to make people believe something happened that's contrary to what really happened. And it's always very difficult to go back later, because you have to find evidences. You do not want to just do the same thing, make up new things. So you have to find evidence of the original, use original sources and find evidence of what really happened. So, yeah, and history is so amazing, and we can learn so much that applies to us today. So, and of course, the birth and life of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ is literally the most important thing that has ever happened on the earth. So
it is. And so if your listeners want to, I love Luke and the story of Jesus. However, there is some translation issues with the KJV, the King James Version of the Jerome, translating it back into not the English, but the Hebrew. And so he's translating it from the Latin Vulgate, and there's just the translation errors are there. And so we have a tradition of a manger. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, the Greek word that is used for manger can also mean altar. And my understanding of my God and my Savior Jesus, I see him being born more on an altar, being the Son of God, than in a manger, which is a feeding trough for an animal. But that's just me.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so you have to realize that there can be another translation that actually might mean something more special to the story. Right?
Right. Yeah.
And so I would recommend, if people wanted to read and get a story from the aspect of James, the brother of Jesus, the proto-evangelium of James is actually free on the internet. You can Google it and read it, and that might be a fun little Christmas story to read through. It's going to be different. I think it's amazing to read, especially when it talks about the entry of Jesus, someone who is timeless, into our world of time and space. It's beautiful. Another book I recommend is The Christmas Story by Margaret Barker. And again, it's just going to give you more information about the translation problems that we have in the King James Version. And it will give you perhaps a different perspective of Jesus Christ with his birth than what you have learned through the traditions that we have today. Because that's what we are really reading from, our traditions, because even the animals don't show up until more like the 400, 500 AD.
Right.
The story of animals being in there. They're not there at the birth, but they're part of the story now.
Right.
They're part of that tradition now.
And they're very much part of the story.
We do our nativity play with our grandkids and all of that. But there is much more to the story to learn if you have an interest in that. And if you don't, that's fine. But there are sources out there that apocryphal sources that can give us more insight to Jesus and his birth.
Yeah, which is all very interesting to learn. But I think the most important part of Jesus' story really is what Jesus said. It's the things that Jesus taught. And his gospel and his teachings are, to me, the most amazing, incredible truths. They are divine. They're absolutely amazing. So
they are. And
we're
his
so
mission
blessed
to lead us back to our Heavenly Father. I mean, he conquered death. He conquered Satan. And now we have the ability to follow him back home to our heavenly parents. I mean, that's beautiful. And so, our Jesus Christ is, he's the pinnacle. He's the only way back. And his gospel is what allows us to live amongst each other in peace and harmony.
Absolutely.
And what's beautiful, let's get back to the Electoral College, is we have a constitution that is based on God's law.
100%.
That's what's so beautiful.
The foundation.
And so when we follow the Constitution, it benefits everyone.
Yes.
It doesn't matter your creed, your color, your male, female. It doesn't matter. It benefits everyone if you follow the Constitution, which is based on protecting God's law.
Absolutely. And freedom, the foundation of freedom really is God's law, because you cannot have freedom without a moral foundation. And we know that through history, without exception, when the people are moral, they have freedom and prosperity. When the people are not moral, they lose their freedom. They lose their liberty. They become in bondage because you can't govern yourself. You can't live free without having that moral foundation. And so that really is the story of Christ, is to put that moral foundation back in ourselves, back in our society, and restore our families, and we will restore freedom and liberty. And
you know what feels really good this Christmas? I mean, there's been a whole change in the mood across the nation since November 5th.
There hasn't there?
And I'm most excited that God is now welcomed back into the White House.
100%.
Because he's not been there for the last 4 years, and it's nice to know that he's going to be, well, Okay, wait, back up. We're still in the Biden administration. Okay, you might not be welcome this year. They
Right.
usually do something very strange that would chase anything of righteousness out of the White House. So, unfortunately, but with this new administration coming in, we can look forward to 25 and 26 and 27 and 28 with God being welcomed in the White House like he was when Trump was president in his first administration.
That to me is the most exciting part of all. It's really that we have now that moral foundation, that the adding the source of all of our rights and our freedoms, the source of our prosperity, the source of our families, the source of life itself is going to be welcomed back into the White House and the administration and back into our country. And I find that really is exciting. And that never comes without pushback, without opposition. So there will be great opposition to that. But that's what life is all about. So it is very exciting. So, Kris, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for taking time. Thank you for all your service to the citizens of Utah and the citizens of the nation in being an elector and for standing up for truth and righteousness. And tell us a little bit, just do a real quick plug, Legacy Tours and Travel.
Yeah, Legacy Tours, TOURS, and travel.com. And you can look at our tours are based on recreation, education, and spiritual. And so we're that tour company where you're going to go and learn.
Yes.
Okay, so if you have a desire to learn history and to investigate and look at history that's not the common traditional history that we hear, that's where your company, because that's what we do. We really explore some of the ancient traditions that aren't as commonly looked at in the world today and go right to the site and right to the source of where these stories took place. And it's very fascinating.
Yeah. So if you want to take a tour, go online and see the different tours that they have coming up. It's a great opportunity for education. Plus they know what they're doing. It's very safe. They have everything all really well organized. I wouldn't want to go to Egypt without being on an excellent tour like Kris provides. So thank you so much, Kris. We really appreciate it. And appreciate you being here. And we just want to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas. And remember that we really are the guardians of our own liberty. We are very blessed. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.